Welcome to day 6. As your system grows, exposing every microservice on a different port becomes a nightmare. If your user service is on port 8001 and your other service is on port 8002, your front-end developer is going to hate you. And also exposing your internal services directly to the internet is a massive security risk. So in this episode, we are going to solve this challenge by introducing an API gateway using a tool called Traefik. It will act as a single entry point for our entire backend, routing traffic automatically based on the URL path. So let's lock down our system. We don't need to write Python code for our gateway. Traefik is a production-ready reverse proxy that integrates natively with Docker. We just add it as a new service in our compose file. And then we shall tell it to listen on port 80 for web traffic and also on port 8080 for its built-in dashboard. And then finally, we shall mount the Docker socket so that Traefik is automatically able to discover our FastAPI containers as they spin up. So I will add Traefik block at the top of the services section in compose.yaml. So I'll just go above here, hit tab, and say I want a service called Traefik. And then I'll go to the next line. AI is trying to suggest some things, but I'll ignore them and just type manually. I want Traefik full colon v3.0. Okay, and then the command shall be, of course, once you've learned this from my video, go ahead and use AI. In fact, if I was not doing a tutorial, I would just autocomplete and walk through it. But because this is a tutorial, I try sometimes to go step by step. Okay, so I'll put 2 full colons. Then let's go through the command. It will be -API dot insecure, okay, equals to true. And this will enable the web dashboard. Then after that, I'll have another one, and it will be --providers dot docker equals to true. This one tells Traefik to listen to Docker. After that, we shall have another one saying --providers dot docker dot exposed by, okay, exposed by default equals to false. This is a security command saying don't expose containers by default. And then on the last line, I can have one saying entry points, like you see AI suggesting, dot web dot address equals to full colon 80. Okay, right now I can hit tab. Okay, just autocomplete everything and I'll explain to you. They're not that complex. So this one simply is for the main HTTP entry point. Then the first port 80 will be the main API gateway port. Then 8080 will be the Traefik dashboard port. Then of course, right here is the volume mount I talked about earlier. Now let's move on. Now we must reconfigure our user service. We're going to do two things. First, we shall delete one of the ports mappings for the user service. And this is because we don't want anyone to bypass the Traefik gateway in order to hit port 8000 directly. And the second thing is that we're going to use Docker labels. Docker labels are going to help us to talk to Traefik so that we can tell Traefik to enable routing for the user service. And then we can also set a rule that any request starting with /users should be sent to the container, which is the user container on its internal port 8000. So I'll scroll and go to the user service. And like I told you, the first thing is to remove these ports. Okay, so you can delete. okay, or comment it out. Maybe I should comment it out so that you know it was there. Then after that, I'm going to do the second thing I told you we're going to do is to use labels. So just before environment, I'll say labels, okay, full colon. You can see AI is suggesting. I'll hit tab, okay, and then walk you through, okay. Like I told you, this is how we talk to Traefik. We tell Traefik to enable routing for this service. Which service? Which is the user service, by saying Traefik.enable equals to true. After that, we set a rule, okay, saying any request starting with /users. So I'm going to fix that by coming here and I change. This is not what I wanted. That's why it's important to review what AI has given you. So I'll delete this, okay, and change it to path prefix, okay, like it has suggested. So I'll say traffic.http.routers.user service.rule equals to path prefix /users, okay. So when someone goes to /users, what happens? We want that request to be sent to this container's internal port 8000, which is what this last line says. So it is traffic.http.services, okay, which service? User service, and it's the load balancer, okay, and on the load balancer we're configuring its server.port to be 8000, okay. So it's nice that we have a load balancer, okay. So like I told you, it is an HTTP configuration. One small thing I've seen that we can add to make everything better is to simply also ensure that the user service depends on the product service. Yeah, very small, nothing related to traffic, but yeah, it's good. Here is a common junior mistake. Thinking every service needs to be in the gateway. Ask yourself a question. Should we add traffic labels to our product service? Is it necessary? No, it isn't. Our product service is a gRPC backend that should only be called internally by the user service because we set exposed by default equals to false on traffic. This line 7. We have the product service completely invisible. It remains invisible and inaccessible to the outside world. Now that we are on a unified port 80, our frontend can talk to us, but browsers enforce a strict security policy called calls. If a frontend app running on localhost port 3000 tries to hit our API gateway on localhost port 80, the browser will block it. So we must explicitly allow it. While Traefik can handle calls, I think it's easier to handle it dynamically inside FastAPI using its built-in middleware. So go to the main.py module inside the user service, and at the top, I'll import the cause middleware by saying from FastAPI, okay, .middleware .cause import cause middleware. And then just after app, okay, I'll say app.add middleware. Does it have an underscore? Yeah, I think it has an underscore. .add middleware. And I'll hit tab to autocomplete this. So the first argument is passing the cause middleware that we just imported. Then allow origins is a list of origins. In this case, you can put, for example, like the front-end URL, and in production, make sure you change this to your front-end URL. But for now, I will put an asterisk or a star to mean allow all origins. Then also know that you can fetch these values from your environment variables. Then allow credentials equals to true. You can turn it to false if you need to. Allow methods. I'm using an asterisk, but this can be a list of maybe get, post, put, or delete. But now I'm allowing all. Also for headers, I'm allowing all, but you can include here a list of strings that represent the headers that you want to allow. It's time for verification. In the terminal, I'll run docker compose app -- build, hit enter. Of course, you might put -d after build so that it runs in the backend, but I can have it because I love seeing things being pulled. Okay, so you see about 44 MBs being downloaded. Wow, that's quite a lot. So let's wait for it to get done. All right, looks good. So the first thing I need to do is to test, of course, our architecture, but let's first check port 8080. I will go to our browser, HTTP. I want localhost port 8080 and hit enter. All right, this is nice. So this is the Traefik dashboard. Here we can see everything, our routers, our services, our middlewares. Before we open the browser to check, I want to add one more configuration that I saw when I was reading about Traefik. They say in V3 you have to make sure you explicitly add the entry point under the labels. So I just paste it, and then indet simply says traffic.http.routers.userservice.entrypoints equals to web, so that it can have an interface on port 8080. In other words, it will know that the entry point is on port 8080 and will send our communication here. So you can see this, it says an error while picking fast byte. Let me close this and try to run it again. So it's stopping. I'll say docker compose down and docker compose up. Okay, now if I go to the browser, refresh again, if you look here, you see we have now the 4th service instead of the 3 services that we had. So if I go and say localhost /users, okay, I'm glad it remembers, then hit enter. Look at that. Let me expand this. We get good results. Okay, yeah. So this is the real test, and look at it. Look at the URL carefully. There is no port number, and our user purchases endpoint was hit, so it works perfectly. So essentially the request hits Traefik on port 80. So Traefik routes it to the user service. The user service makes a gRPC call to the hidden product service, and then JSON is returned back through the gateway. We now have a single clean URL for our front-end developers. But how do we secure it? If we have 5 different services, we don't want to write login and password checking code 5 different times. That would be a lot of stuff to do. In day 7, we shall implement shared authentication using JWTs. I will show you how to securely identify users across your entire microservice cluster without hitting the database on every request. Subscribe, and I'll talk to you in day 7.